Please note this episode contains discussions of situations or themes that some may find emotionally distressing. Listener discretion is advised.
You lived in fear. You could have conversation as long as they were positive. You started to learn that there's things that you say and there's the things that you must never speak of. I had this absolutely massive bang. Life stopped. And I started seeing things that I don't want to see. I didn't want to see people get shot. And I remember finding a Sony Walkman and I'll turn it on full blast just to drown out the sound of the bullets. I remember having a conversation with my dad saying you need to get out of here.
How many years went by before you saw your father?
Didn't know he was coming. And I opened the door and he stood there. And I waited for that moment for so long.
Today's guest is the incredible Farsh Raoufi MBE, an equality and inclusion consultant, an ex-station commander for the Fire and Rescue Service. Now, Farsh's story begins in his birth country, Iran. At an early age, life took a drastic turn following the build-up of civil unrest and the collapse of the Pahlavi dynasty government in 1979. With the fear and horrors on the streets of Iran, Farsh managed to escape at the young age of 13 to seek refuge in the UK. This new setting brought with it a harsh reality, one of racism, abuse and bullying, and Farsh was faced with a whole new set of challenges that he had to overcome just in order to survive. Farsh's story is one of courage and determination, as he found his purpose working in the Fire and Rescue Service, serving his community over a 31-year career, working his way up from frontline to station commander. Today, Farsh dedicates his time advocating for equality and empowerment, and he's here today to share his story with you. Well, Farsh, welcome to the show. Firstly, it's great to have you on here today. How are you?
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I'm feeling lots of different emotions. I'm feeling excited to be here. I think I'm going to learn a lot from what we're going to talk about myself.
Yeah.
I think the emotions going to go up and down. I hope we have some laughs. I think I'm going to have some few tears, but I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh. Well, it's great to have you. And hey, emotions, feelings are real. I think they're the most real things. So we'll just feel how we feel throughout this show. Yeah. And, speaking of that, just before we got into this, I know we just did a visualization and went through the graph of your life. We're going to delve into that, but without going into too many of any peaks or troughs, how was that exercise for you?
I had to concentrate to visualize it. And then I had to put in context what those things meant. So there were one or two highs and lows. Thing is, I tend to find at the very lows, there's still some highs there. Yeah. And when you get to the other end, so it is up and down. It's up and down. It's how do you try to keep it up, knowing that it is going to waver. But there's one or two events in my lifetime that there's nothing's ever sort of going to come close to them in terms of the impact it's had on my life.
Now, I know throughout the show we're going to go into some of those moments, and I think there's so much to learn from your experience. But for now, I just actually want to go right back to the beginning of your life and just ask you, what's the earliest childhood memory that you have in your mind?
Really positive stuff. I remember being a little kid playing in the garden, big garden, flowers. I remember not knowing what privilege is, but I think it was a privileged life. And with that, what I mean is, I had everything that I wanted and I wasn't missing anything initially. I had the support of a family. I had a good home. And this is perhaps just before my earliest memories, just before going to school.
Okay.
I remember the simple things in life. There was no TV or media as such. We had one radio. There was a late night show, half an hour. Everybody sat around this radio, listened to late night show, and then we just talked, played a few games, and we went to sleep. And on a good night, when it was on warm nights, we go and sleep outside. So you take your bedding outside and you sleep on the stars. And the thing that I haven't seen, the biggest thing I miss is lying on the ground, looking up to the sky, where there is no other artificial light, and seeing how many millions of lights, stars there is, shooting stars every few minutes. And that was just heaven to me.
It's amazing.
That was heaven to me. So my earliest memories are great.
And this was obviously, you were born in Iran, and this is back at home in Iran in your early years. And just paint a picture, I suppose, for us of what was life like growing up. Let's look at your first 10 years of your life in particular, of course. What was life like in Iran?
So at that time, not understanding much about economics and politics, it was fine. It was, I would say, the standard of living was very much same as a European when I came here. It was actually, I would say, probably a better standard of living initially. There was, as I grew up, we would hear the country was run by a king. So you would hear about this king and the royal family, but you were restricted in saying or doing anything against that family. So you could have conversation as long as they were positive. You couldn't question that. So you started to learn that there's things that you say and there's the things that you must never speak of. If you understood that little rule, life could thrive, and there was not much restrictions. So what you perhaps see now with the way the ladies are self-covered, the restrictions on who can do what, that didn't exist at that time. It's just walking through London Street, no restrictions, with the one that you could not speak badly of the royal family and the king. And of course, he ran the government. Well, then I remember that something quite big, sort of that's taken the biggest shape of my life, happened in those early years. I started going to school, and I noticed that other people, when they've been picked up, they've been picked up by a lady who was older than the lady that was picking me up.
Okay.
Because I had my sisters picking me up, and other people were having their mums picking them up. And then I started to hear this word, mum, and I didn't have one of them. So it opened up a gap that, what is this mum? Who is she? Why don't I have one? And then things started to sort of roller coaster from there on. Because I think to save my emotions, to save me from the pain, the rest of the family never spoke about me having a mum or anybody having a mum. And of course, when you don't have iPhones and iPads and TVs and stuff, if within your household and in your smaller community, if you're not speaking about a mum, you wouldn't know such thing exists. I knew there was a hole, but I didn't know what it was. So over the next few years, I didn't speak of it either, because I thought if nobody's speaking about it, maybe you shouldn't speak about it. There were no possessions, there was no photographs, there was nothing to suggest this person ever existed. It was painful. It was painful because as I saw other people, I was thinking, why don't I have one? Did I have one? And then I started hearing bits about, I think she died of cancer. Cancer didn't mean anything to me at that point. I just thought that, right, where's my mum? Now she's gone. I want to know a bit about her. Did she love me? Did she hold me? Did she feed me? What did she smell like? What did she look like? Did she cuddle me? All the things that I think naturally you want to know. And not having the whole picture, not having information, you dig a hole and you fill it with your worst fears. And I'm sure, again, I've heard your story. You must know that when you don't have all the pieces, how much that can hurt. And you do fill it with worst case scenarios. And I started thinking, did she die because of my birth?
Okay.
And then I thought, do rest of the family, do my siblings hold me responsible for that? And that's a really heavy burden to carry at that age.
And how old were you at this point?
5. And I've never had any inclination that anybody held me responsible or I was responsible. Lack of information, you start filling it in, and it hurts. And for years after that, I wondered, was it my fault? And worse than that, to these people I call brothers and sisters. I know they love me. They give their life for me. I wondered if they thought that if I wasn't here, maybe she would be. And life, the way life went from there on, I didn't get those answers. I didn't get those answers for years. And I think I was in my late 20s when I had a conversation about, who was she? What happened?
Wow.
And all of that time going through everything else, that was the one question on my mind. Who was she?
And so, as you say, and I know, Farsh, we're going to touch upon some of this later as you go into your teen years and into your 20s and clearly discover some of the answers to these questions that you had. And so back then, you're 5-6 years old, you're at school. As you say, you notice that other people are being picked up with a lady who's older than your sister. And whilst I want to come back to your mum a little bit later, you mentioned something I just want to go into, because you mentioned there that whilst Iran was run with a king and a monarchy, you couldn't speak ill of the king in any which way. What would happen if you did?
You hear stories about places called political prisons. Political prisoners will be taken and they'd be tortured, they'd be executed, there'd be hundreds, maybe thousands. Number-wise, you heard of these people that you never saw them again.
Right.
So it was scary that, who's listening, who isn't listening, what's going to happen if I say something, is the rest of my family going to get arrested? They're going to be tortured, they're going to be taken away. So it was living in fear of that.
And at home then, what was the narrative? Did you not even speak about the monarchy? Or if the king ever did an address on the radio internally, would it be like, what are the views? Were they negative views? Were they positive? Were they indifferent?
You didn't speak of it because you didn't know who to trust, because there was a big network of security services that would look for things like that. So you just didn't speak, didn't come up. If you came up, it'd be, you talk of, great, it's a great king, and you move on. There was more to it at school, because I remember being at school, and when the king came to your town, all the school kids were taken to line up on the route they will take. He have 100 motorcade, followed by a few limousines, he being one of them. I always remember our ambulance following someone behind in case any attempts were made. So all the school kids be on both sides of the road from every school in that town. People in civil service, they've been there. There's a line of police officers lining that line. And you had to shout. They'll tell you, they give you a little flag, wave this, and you're going to shout, "Long live the king."
Gosh.
So that's what you sort of did. And you see these certain people, so while everybody stood still and chanting, you see a few people, men in suits, that would walk around not actually looking at the king. And it was just very obvious for that there were security services, intelligence officers, which, you start doubting what intelligence means. If a 5-year-old can work out, that doesn't quite fit in that arena. No. And you're scared, these people, what they're looking for, and what they're going to do.
And so as you start growing up, I suppose at the age of 10, 11, we get towards 1977 in Iran, where I know the civil unrest starts to happen. And eventually going towards, and we'll talk about these years, towards 1979, where the monarchy was completely overruled by the Islamic Republic.
Yes.
But just talk to us very high level, for those of us who maybe don't know enough about that, what was going on in those 2 years? And then I want to go into you personally in a moment, but just very high level, just to educate us a little bit on this period of history.
So usually what tends to happen in when people start to have those conversations about, I don't actually like this regime, or I have an alternative view. When you live in a dictatorship, those conversations usually happens in universities, because that's where the intellectual or the people start exploring those things. So they start having those conversations. So there is small scale, a group of people who get together, and that starts to get bigger. Sometimes becomes demonstrations, but in way of, they'll meet, they chant, they sort of make a protest, and they disappear, because if they stay there, they're likely to sort of be taken away. So starting in 77, those things started, and it got bigger and bigger. You get to a stage that it become a main event. There'll be a lot of people involved. Now, usually police will try to contain the situation, gain there, disperse them, so there is nothing left. As this gets bigger and bigger, and they can't manage that, the army gets involved. Every sort of 40 days, there'd be another event. Right. It'd be bigger, and the army starts to sort of actually put sandbags and the tanks on corners of the town squares. Right. So they're ready, preempting stuff. And this seems to just get bigger and bigger. So going towards, on other occasion, you hear people being arrested. On other occasion, you hear that they haven't sort of come back. They haven't been seen. It was 10 people, then it was 20 people. Now 30 people are missing and nobody's seen them. And that gets sort of pick up momentum. So getting towards 1979, now the chants are getting louder. The state sort of covered the media. Mm-hmm. So there is, what you hear is gossip, which you got to take with a pinch of salt and see if it's actually true or not. So we're getting towards sort of 79, probably we're looking at maybe late 78. Things got to be out of hand in terms of these things were getting bigger and bigger. So, and then on one occasion, first time I experienced of death by menace, I guess, it wasn't a natural death, was through one of these events. So I remember there was a demonstration that purely by accident, I come across it in a square. I went to have a look. A soldier sort of stopped me. There were soldiers with guns stopped me, told me to go away. So I went around the corner.
How old were you?
I'm at this point, I'm about 12 years old.
Okay.
Maybe coming up to 12 and a half. So I was curious what was going on. You see, today if you see a big demonstration going on in London, you want to see what it's about. So from around the corner, I'll sort of look, and the army had they tried to contain this town square. So they had people blocking every exit, and I thought it'd be like any other one. They're gonna get in middle there, disperse them, send half that way, and mm-hmm. they're gone. So as I hit around the corner, I heard this absolutely massive bang, and it just stopped me. So almost life stopped at that point, because up to that point, you could hear a lot of noise, people shouting stuff, long live somebody, death to somebody, whatever they were shouting. Suddenly everything went quiet. I wasn't quite sure what that was. Never heard that noise before. And after a few seconds, the shouting, the chanting became screams. And then I heard that noise again and again. And I realized this was gunfire. Never heard it. You sometimes hear now on TV and, stuff like that. But at that time, I've never heard that before. And the whole world seemed to stop. And things got out of hand. There was more and more gunfire. Then I could see people running in different directions trying to escape, but they were running, everywhere was blocked off by soldiers. And as they were running towards those soldiers, they were panicking and they were firing back. So it just got bigger and bigger. I would say, looking at it now, I was a good safe distance away, but it was close enough to feel the pain and when a bullet lands, about 10, 15 meters away from you, you may think it's a long distance, but it isn't. It's very close. And I started seeing things that I don't want to see. I didn't want to see people get shot. I didn't want to see blood running through sort of gutters. The shops and stores and stuff that you were there, an hour ago, 10 minutes ago, you've been there every day. They're covered with bullets. Everything's broken. All the groceries, the jam jars, the milk bottles, everything broken, and it's running through the street. And then I saw something really, really disturbing, which as humans I think we do, but it was first time I thought of somebody's dignity being taken away. Because while people were trying to save themselves, they used people who were already perhaps dead. Maybe they were their family, maybe they were their friends. They were hiding behind dead bodies. They were actually using dead bodies as shelter. And it just took the whole, there was no dignity in death. You want to think if you die, somebody will respect you. And there wasn't any of that. And, I had no connection. I had no sort of family, friends in those scenarios. But you can help feeling the despair that they had.
Yeah. And Farsh, sorry, at this point, the people who were doing the shooting were the army of the country that the king had commanded to sort out these protests.
That's correct, yeah.
And the people being shot were those who were protesting.
That's correct, yeah.
And you at 12 now, you're seeing this, as you say, curiosity, you're wondering what's going on. Were you by yourself?
I was by myself at that point. It just happened so quick at that point. Gone out to get a few bits. We're playing football with friends out on the street. Went out to get some milk, stuff like that. So it was nothing. I didn't go out to look for this. I didn't go out to say or do anything. I was just doing what everybody does in their daily life. And I ran home, and I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything to my family. To
why
my
not
dad.
Then at that point?
Because I didn't know if I was supposed to be there or not. I didn't know if I was supposed to if I say something, was I wrong to be there? I didn't know if that was going to impact. If I say something and somebody's seen me and the talk starts, if they'll come and get me or my family, do they think that my family sent me there to demonstrate or anything? So I didn't say anything. I just kept that in.
And like before this all happened, clearly that's, out of fear and worry, you didn't say anything. Do you feel, did you grow up with fear before all of this started to happen?
I would say it was always, you couldn't speak of certain things, so you were silenced. And as long as you don't go there, you're okay. But the minute you sort of open your mouth and say something against the regime, that could be the end of you or the people that you loved.
And as the time goes on then, as things start to escalate, just talk to me a little bit about, I suppose, the key moments that really come to mind
so
in 1979.
So at that time, I remember the king going and the religious leader, the Ayatollah Khomeini at that time, coming back into the country. It was so weird being that young and seeing things pan out, because then I remember we were taken from the same school with the same teacher, going on the same roads, holding the same flag. Now we have to shout death to the king, long live this one. And it got to a point that you're going out on so many occasions and you're thinking, right, do I shout death to or long live somebody? Because if I get it wrong, that's going to be a really bad day.
Gosh.
And it's that fear of, what do you want me to shout at that point? It's really important, I think, perhaps at this point, because that's happening all over the world right now. I remember dropping my flag and I bent down to pick it up, because before that point, when I was looking, I was seeing anger. I was seeing people shouting, as you see on TVs. Perhaps you look at them and you think they got so much hate in them and they got so much anger. Drop my flag, I bent down to pick it up, and as I looked up, I saw fear rather than anger. I saw people saying what they had to say to survive. I saw people, we talk about creating safe spaces that didn't exist. And I've grown up thinking that unless you people are, if they're worried about their lives or livelihoods, they're never going to tell you the truth. They're going to tell you what you think you want to hear. And that's whether you go through your study, whether you go through life with your family or in business, unless you feel safe, you are not going to say what you really think. Big lesson for me that day. And that went on. We kept doing that. But as the regime started to fall, people on both sides were now having guns. So there wasn't just one side with gun. So every night you hear running battles. Every time you sort of close your eyes, you hear gunfire going on right outside the house. You come out in the morning and you see your garden wall full of bullets. You look at next door neighbors and there's bullets gone through the window. You hear somebody down the road actually got shot and they're dead because they looked out the window and they randomly been shot. So every night you hear all these bullets flying around and stuff like that. At that time, it was the noise that really got me. And I remember finding a Sony Walkman. Now, I don't know if young listeners know what that is, but you put it in your ear and you listen to music. Unfortunately, you don't have a choice of a lot of music. And this tape was Muppet Show. And I don't know where it came from. And I would put the headphones on, listening to Muppet Show that I didn't know what Muppet Show was. And I would turn it on full blast just to drown out the sound of the bullets and the gunfire. Every now and then, hand grenades, there's explosions. And I just wanted that to stop. So I put these headphones on and I put on full blast. And that was my coping mechanism. I'll lie down on the floor under the window because I've heard that's where the bullets come from. That's where people die. So I'll lie down on the floor behind a hard cover. And those things were coping mechanisms. But to this day, I'm getting a bit better. But as we sat here talking, if somebody put the radio on, it's the Muppet Show, I'll become the 11-year-old scared boy. The hairs on my arms will stick up. I'll cowl down. I'll go into myself. My voice was shaking as it is now because I can feel that. I associate that noise with that. If we're sitting here talking again, I'm comfortable talking to you. If we sat somewhere else with a window behind me, it'd probably be probably different. You think I'm nervous because I'm talking to you about something. I'm nervous because it's just that light coming through that way. It makes me nervous. I've got better throughout the years. I come here, a car backfires. I hit the deck because I don't know what's going on. And when people sometimes don't understand this thing, they take a mickey out of you and they think it's funny, walking behind you and banging something to watch you dive on the ground. But it's real feelings. And I can see, somebody think it's funny, but they're real feelings that is still there.
And back then, and so when you were hiding, were your family with you? I mean, you got the Walkman in. Were they not protecting you?
They were there, and if you're in different room, but you didn't, we didn't speak about stuff like that because it becomes such a daily event. It was just like, just keep your head down, and you'll be all right, sort of thing. And you took that as you'll be all right, and you didn't talk about your fears so much. As things started to move and regime changed, certain people that were with the old regime, and I don't know if they were guilty of anything or if they were not, they were taken, and there was death by fire squad every morning. And the only way of communication apart from radio was newspaper, the state newspaper. So every day on the newspaper, the front page were 4 faces of dead people. This is to tell the country, tell your town that these were whatever they were with the last regime. They hurt people, they're bad people, and they were sentenced, overnight somehow. There was no courts or judgment. They were dead. But just to wake up in the morning and pick up your newspaper and there's 4 dead, people on there, shot in the head, shot in the face, just to sort of see that you lived in fear. Every now and then, there'd be public hangings. So if you were gay, if you sort of had a different preference to what the normality they thought was, that was your sentence. There was nothing else. So they hang people in town square, and they take photographs for newspapers. Every now and then you see on newspaper that what they mass hangings where they get a dozen people, whether they were guilty of anything, I don't know, whether they were good or bad, I don't know. But what they will do is get a crane, have an actual metal square frame with 12 nooses hanging from them. They put it around people's neck and they actually lift them up. So they're doing it by mass. So you don't even have the dignity of your own noose, even if you're guilty and that was the sentence and punishment. And these things were all going on, and you just lived in fear.
And I mean, as horrible and horrific as this is, and obviously the things that you've seen and people living in Iran at this this time, and you're just about to become a teenager, I guess, turning 13 at some point.
Yeah.
What was the expectations of you at school now? Did that change as the regime changed? Do you have to get involved? Do you have to?
Yeah, absolutely. So, initially, my earliest memory is that I was really bright academically. I was on the top 1%. So I'll go to school and I'll do geography, history, I'll do all the sciences, maths, languages, all sort of stuff like that. And I'll get 100% in everything every day. That changed. Schooling changed to they weren't doing those subjects so much more. Now the teachers sort of almost had a free hand. Right. And the teachers would start to come in and they give their interpretation of what religion was, their interpretation of geography or history, their interpretation of the political climate. And sometimes some of them would bring guns in. And they show you, this is a gun, this is how you load and reload, this is how you clean it. And certain people, when they showed any interest in that, they will go and they teach them how to shoot guns. And looking back, you can see how they're brainwashing people and how they start to use people's vulnerabilities to recruit them to do what they want them to do.
And this is at school.
This is at school, yeah.
But the teachers who were before under the king, are they now completely displaced? They're the same teachers?
No different, hands up, no different to me shouting one day because I was told shout, long live to this one. Now I'm shouting death to this one and long live this one. Not that I believed in any of it. But if I didn't do that, was I at risk? Was my family at risk? Mm-hmm. So you did what you had to do to get out of that scenario quick as you can. The two things that I've valued most in my life is that is that I don't want to be hurt and I don't want to hurt anybody. And they seem to be the two things that they're pushing for. Hurt somebody or I hurt you. Kill somebody or I kill you. And I just, I don't want to hurt anybody and I don't want to be hurt. It's not much to ask. Right here, leave me be in the corner. But in that scenario, that's what they're pushing you for.
And so what were they expecting of you then? So you get to 12, 13.
Yeah.
Because we're going to come on to how things had to change because this is a country that you quite simply couldn't go on living in.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not wrong, were they getting children around like landmines and areas? And just tell me a bit about
that came later on. So Iran went to... everybody was recruited into sort of being soldier or being soldier of your country and your religion, stuff like that. Iran went to war with Iraq sometime after that. Now, I'd left the country by that point, so I wasn't involved in that part. And I think it was arranged for me to leave the country because my father could see that's the route that it was going, that you're going to become a soldier regardless of your age. If you could pick up a gun, I mean, in school, they were already teaching you, some teachers were teaching some kids what guns are about. But when I got here, and I'm sure we'll talk about that, when I got here, I was hearing stories back home about anybody who could pick up a gun were a soldier now, and they were going to fight Iraq. And if you weren't big enough to carry a gun, you became part of a team or a squad of people that were used to clear landmines. And what I mean by that is your soldiers, people who could shoot guns, your tanks, they were your assets that you couldn't lose. And between the two countries, there is minefields. And the stories that I heard, I mean, people will have to do their own research to see the authenticity of it, is that kids were walking across these minefields. So they're actually walking on a mine for it to blow up. So it clears it for your assets, being tanks and stuff. Now,
kids are being blown up.
Kids are being blown up for tanks to go. Now, I didn't see this with my own eyes, so like I say, people need to check their own authenticity on this. But I've seen documentaries and documents that these kids were carrying a key, just a normal, everyday physical key around their necks.
Right.
And when they done the research to see why that was, is they were told that this is the key to the gates of heaven. So if you do this for your country, if you do this for your religion, you can go straight up there. There's your key. Open up the door and in you go. So people were brainwashed to voluntary doing stuff like that. I believe it's called something like plastic keys to paradise or something along those lines.
I mean, there's just so much you said about brainwashing, and we'll come on to this later because it still goes on in the world today. But back then, you already mentioned about you escaping and leaving Iran. Just talk to me about who came to you and said, we've got to get you out this country. And then how did you get out?
So far what I talked about is probably my perception as a kid was actually, I think it was a lot more dangerous than what I perceived it to be. The brainwashing, the actually joining there. If I could have gone down one route, I've started using guns and joining different gangs and groups and stuff. So that part I think is actually a lot more dangerous than my perception. Me getting out of Iran, although for me, for that child, seemed a lot more dangerous, was probably one of the safest thing, because it was arranged for me to get out of Iran and come to UK. It was arranged by my father with one of his friends who lived in UK.
Right.
Now this guy, he was British. He was Polish, and he came here after the Second World War and started a family here with an English lady, and they got three daughters and one boy. He was a family friend. They trusted him. I didn't really know at that point much about him. He couldn't speak my language. I couldn't speak his language, so I didn't really know. But I just remember that he came and there was this almost a handover. I remember having a conversation with my dad saying sort of, you need to get out of here. We're sort of going to get you. You're going to go and live with these people. You're going to go somewhere else. And I guess I could have a choice if I put my foot down, if I kicked off, if I'd done all those things. But I also could feel the danger as well that I was going to be on there. And when some of the stories that you're talking about, my God, if I was there, I was no good at shooting. I hate guns. I want nothing to do with guns. So I would be probably walking across those minefields. So I said, yeah, I'll go. But again, that's another event in my life. I never understood what it took for my dad to do that until I became a parent. We sometimes talk about unconditional love, and I don't know if I got that, because I don't know if I could do that to my daughter. I don't know if I could hand her over to somebody I don't know and say, go and live, because this ain't going to work for you. I don't know if I could do that.
But I suppose it's the question in your dad's mind, would you do that, or would you risk them being forced to have to stand on landmines? Yeah.
And I didn't understand that till I had my own daughter. And the strength that he must have taken to say, right, go, because I remember my earliest memories again is with my dad. I didn't have a mum, so he was my whole world. He was everything I looked up to. Every night he set me mathematical sort of equations, and he said, right, we're going to do a quiz, get these done. And, we go back and forth doing things together. So leaving, what I thought was my whole world effectively in terms of my support systems, and going somewhere that I didn't know anything about.
With people you had
no idea. With people that I had no idea. And we couldn't communicate.
Because they were Polish or speaking English.
And I couldn't understand the word of what they were talking about.
And so is this happening in Iran?
Yeah.
Your dad's there, and this Polish couple who've now moved to the UK, they're there.
He was on his own, so the Polish man came.
Okay.
So I'm handed over effectively, saying the travel was by airplane. It was through Russia, because when a country goes into civil war and revolution, you're limited. So what tends to happen, the media gets taken over, the transport system gets taken over, so everything's controlled. There was no flights out to European countries or America or England. So you had to go to America, and what I learned later, it was a connection there. We had to stay there and then come to UK.
To Russia.
So this was in Moscow. Now, looking at it now, I can see that it probably was all pre-organized, and it was going to be all right. But at the time I left, what I understood from Russia was there's still Cold War, Iron Curtain. There's this country that does God knows what to his people, really secretive, really powerful. So we land in Moscow and Moscow airport, and we're taken by soldiers with guns. They got rifles. We're taken to a room. There's a lot of shouting going on, and I've no idea what the hell is going on. Neither from the person that I thought I was with or from the other side. Who is on my side?
Yeah.
What is going on here? And then we're taken to underneath we're taken through these concrete corridors, and my perception from them, I believe they were like cells. Because they were secure, there was no windows or anything like that. So we were taken to a room. We were put in there. There's a guard stood outside the door. There's another one down the corridor, and there's two single beds against the wall. Nothing else in there really. And I'm thinking, I've no idea how long we're going to be here. Is this it now? Is this it? Because even the my support or the person that was with me can't communicate with me to say, it's okay.
But is he comforting you? Is he giving you a hug? Is he like...
He's there, and he's, what I picked up really early in life at that point was you don't need language to have comfort. I could see how hard he was trying on my behalf. I could see the shouting was for me, not for him, because he could come and go as he pleases. So everything he's going through for me. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciated that. But at the same time, I didn't want to be a burden or a danger to somebody else. It doesn't matter whether I was 12, 13 or 50. I don't want to be a burden or danger to somebody else. So we stayed there. I think we were there 2 days. I think it was overnight. And then the guards came and got us. And at this point, bearing in mind, last time I seen guards, uniform and rifles, it was going to be dawn executions. And I'm thinking, right, is this it or not? And like I say, looking at it now, I think that was probably safe as anything, but not understanding what was going on. I was thinking, is this our time? We were put on a plane, and then we landed at Heathrow, seeing British flag.
Do you still remember when you landed?
Oh, I remember where I landed. Yeah, it was like, I can breathe now, because I think I held my breath for like 3 or 4 days during that time.
And how did you know that you could breathe? Because your dad had told you it was safe. Why did you think the UK was safe?
It was emotions. It was like seeing this guy is now relaxed, seeing other people moving around relaxed, not seeing people with guns, because at that time, I know if you go through Heathrow now, there's police officers with guns, but there wasn't at that time. The police didn't carry guns, in those days. And that was a key point as well, because every other police officer got guns. These didn't. And that was such a relief, because I can't think of anything uglier, colder than a gun. And just not seeing that, it just like, it made me relax. And I thought, yeah, I can breathe. I don't know what tomorrow's going to look like, but today, I'm okay.
And you arrive here then, so you start, I suppose, growing up in your teen years in the 80s here. And you're living with the Polish man and his
family,
family. So you come here, you still can't communicate. You don't speak any English.
No.
So what, are you in your room? Are you silent? How are you talking? How do you say what you want to eat? How do you...
by gestures. Yeah. By gestures, by like, I'm hungry, and they put food in front of you. Can I sleep? Where can I sleep? Where can I change stuff like that? I mean, they were brilliant. They were brilliant, and it's one of the only times in my lifetime outside of my own culture that I felt I was treated as without any restrictions. When we sometimes talk about inclusive, that's as inclusive as it was, because people didn't treat me like a guest or somebody else. They treated me like me. I got credit for what I deserved. I got punished when I deserved it, because of me, because of what I've done, not because of who I was, what I looked like, what my preferences was.
Yeah. And then did you join a school in the UK?
Yes, third or fourth day I was here, I joined the school.
So you go to an English school.
I go to English school.
But you can't understand a word that anyone's saying.
Yeah.
So you're sat in a classroom, so what's happening?
So I'll go there first day and they give me this sheet of paper and there's scribbly bits on there. Later I realised this is timetable, so I wander through corridors until somebody gets hold of me like, where are you supposed to be? Right, get in there. And I'll sit in back of a class, so class size is 30, 40 people, all boys school. I'll get in there, sit in back of a class, and just listen. And there's geography, history, chemistry, all those stuff. And I picked up English I picked up the alphabet, so I tried to read, and I picked up things by association, and so many times, people tell you this is tea and cake. It's tea and cake. You don't know which is which, until they send you and say, can you make the tea? And you come back with a cake and you think, no, that's not it.
And you work it out the other way around.
And then you think, right, I got that one. But it's also at this time, you lost all your support system. I miss my mother still. I haven't forgotten that bit. But now I'm missing my father. I'm missing my language, my culture, my friends, the safety stuff, whether they were good or bad people, they were still people that I could relate to and I could understand. That's all been taken away. And I'm sitting back of this class and you're being treated like you're stupid as well, because you can't understand anything. And you sat in the back. And, at that time, going back in early 80s, if you had any new diversity, you sat at the back, because, if you couldn't read, you're thick. If you didn't know the language, you're thick, you go and sit in the back. And, at that point, something really struck, one of the things that I always remember. I sat in the back and then it just hit me. I used to sit in the front. I was one of the clever. I was I was in top 1%, and now I'm sitting in the back where I don't understand anything. And it just drove it home to me that was there people sat at the back when I was at the front, while I was patting myself and thinking, oh, you're brilliant. Was there people sat over there that was struggling through no fault of their own? So sometimes when perceptions are different to reality sometimes.
And so at this age, the years go on, you're 13, 14, 15. Had you spoken to your dad?
No, because there was no media he used to send me letters every week. So I get a letter every week, which also, I'll sit there waiting. Sometimes the letter comes already opened, because when you send things out of the country in those scenarios, and people check those letters, they randomly read to see what it says, what it's about. So I often get letters, and that was the only form of communications. I really struggled with language, picking things up, and that, being laughed at for pronouncing things. I still do pronounce things differently. Being laughed at saying things the wrong way and having misunderstanding about things. You say, we're going to go and play cricket, and you look in I brought you a little pocket dictionary, that's all I had. You look in there, cricket, it's this little insect, and you think, what are we going to do with that? Bring a couple of bats when we play cricket, and look in there, bats is this little mammal flying mouse. And, when you don't understand the rules, it's a different world. So you could take somebody who is competent, who knows what they're doing, they're engaging, they want to do good. If you don't quite communicate that, they become almost your enemy, or you're thinking, what the hell are you talking about? Why are you putting me in this scenario? So it was a struggle with language, but it got there.
And as the years went on, how many years went by before you saw your father again?
It was just about 11, 12 years before I saw him. It took that long before things calmed down enough for people from Iran to be able to allow to come out. And even at that point, I knew that when they come out, they hold somebody behind. One of my sisters be held behind, so they go back. They weren't allowed to leave the country without, with any more than something like $250. So you can't go and do anything anywhere else. You couldn't take gold possession, rings, watches, stuff like that, just in case you didn't come back. So it was about 11 years before I saw him.
And how was that when you first saw him?
I didn't know he was coming. And I opened the door and he stood there. And I waited for that moment for so long because I didn't think he was coming back. I didn't think that day would come. And it was. I just hugged him and cried for about 10 minutes.
He turned up at the door.
He just turned up at the door. But it was so many emotions went through, and I had the greatest time, that few days I spent with him. It was just brilliant. And one of the happiest memories of my lifetime is we came to London for one day. Nothing special in terms of what we did, where we went and stuff like that. We just walked around the streets. We talked about my mum. And all those questions that I wanted answers to. What was she like? What happened? How did she die? Was she holding her hand? All those questions were answered that day. And I waited 20 years for that day. And I know from your story as well, Kian, when you need those questions eat away at you. And sometimes you're lucky to find those answers, and sometimes, unfortunately, you're not. And it was a brilliant day. Wow. It was a brilliant day. Best day of my life. And I just remember sunshine, walking along and talking about my mum.
Just the two of you.
Just the two of us.
And I know, and thanks for sharing this. It's not easy and it's emotional. There's more tissues as well here. Because you're in your 20s at this point, I guess, and you've seen your dad, and last time he's seen you, you were a boy, and now you've turned into a man, type thing. And so as the years went on, and you're now in your 20s, so your dad then went back to Iran. He had to go.
He had to go back,
Did you miss Iran? Was there part of you wanted to go, or how did you start in your 20s now? How did you feel about that country?
I loved my home there. I've got so many fun memories of that place, but I know what it's changed to, and I don't want to be anywhere near it. And a lot of people went through a lot of pain to give me the privilege, the opportunity, a second chance to life. So going back there is almost sort of dismissing all those efforts for me to go back to something that I think I'll regret. And I don't know what dangers I'll face if I was to get there, but I got nothing left there. It's a memory that I like to keep as a nice memory. But of course I want to go and see the streets that I walked and kick the ball around, the friend's house that they were around. I'd love to go back and see them, but I can't.
And Farsh, just throughout your life then, because you saw so much in the first 10, 12 years of your life, as I get to know you, I feel like you seem very, I couldn't imagine you getting too angry. Do you ever get angry?
I do at times. I think it's healthy to be angry, but I've learned throughout my life to try to park emotions. You got to focus on you got a job at hand, whether that was my professional life or whether that was my growing up life. There's things to be done. There's objectives. You've got to focus on them. And sometimes your personal emotions gets in the way, but you've got to consider other people's emotions. So I've almost learned to park them, focus, get there. When you get there, take a breath, deal with your emotions at that point, and then move on. And anger is something that I think is really necessary in some scenarios, but the sooner that you can get that in, deal with it and get it out, you can get on and then focus on what needs to be done.
And have you always been the type of person who puts other people before yourself?
Yeah, I think I like to please people. I don't say that as a great asset almost, because I like to put people before myself because they're the people. There's so many people that helped me, so many people that stuck their neck out for me, so many people that supported me. I'm here, I'm where I am because of so many people. And I think it's a duty now to return that. And if I can't do it for those people, then I need to do it for somebody else. Because somebody well, hopefully will sit somewhere and they have that day that I had with my dad because something that I might have done. And that might be something as small as asking them, how are you today?
Yeah. And I asked that because then I know you went into your professional career of joining the Fire and Rescue Service here in the UK, and a 31-year career. And we're going to get into this in a moment, just because I know you were awarded an MBE. For your services in the Fire and Rescue Service. What made you go into that? Was that to do with anything in your past? What spurred you in that direction?
Yeah, I think initially when I came here and I started off going to school, exam-wise, I got my first lot of GCSEs, and then the pace changed so much I couldn't keep up with the language. So I went into leisure industry because you don't need language skills for that. Did that for some time, and I thought, this isn't fulfilling me. It was great, being around gyms and stuff, being a personal trainer and working with people, but it wasn't doing it for me. So when I saw there was this job for fire service, and I had a really good friend of mine from school at that time that was already in fire service, and he told me about what he does. I thought, that I had a debt to repay to the people that supported me, to the city that supported me. And it wasn't always easy, Gian. It was, discrimination will exist everywhere and it wears you down. But you can't treat a whole group of people in a different way, turn your back on them because a minority people discriminate against you, because you become one of them. So I thought that's what I needed to do, to repay back, something back to the people and the communities that helped me. So I joined fire service, and as you say, I had 31 fantastic years working there, went through different ranks, went through different scenarios, ups and downs, worked with some absolutely amazing men and women, and got this bond with all of them. And when I go on trips all over the world, first thing I'll do is go to the local fire station and I'll spark a conversation with them, because we share something about helping people.
Wow. And I think, and Farsh, I'm just thinking now, I'm looking at your graph that we put on here and the highs and lows in your life. Now, later in your 40s, and I love the upward trajectory that we've got. If you were to go back, and I suppose you almost seeing that scene of that young boy who was going from his father to the Polish man on the way to Russia, if you could just sit down with him, what would you say to him?
I don't know if I need to say anything. I just want to give him a cuddle and say it's going to be all right. I think that's just what I would do. I'm always careful not to go back and put things right, because if we don't make the mistakes, if we don't learn from those things, we don't become the people that we are. And I probably would turn out some obnoxious person that, you don't want to spend any time with. You may think I'm that now anyway, but I wouldn't be who I am. So every pain, every hurt, every laugh, everything I had, I'm grateful for it, and I'll take it. Because it's got me to this point.
Well, Farsh, thank you so much for sharing so much. And I know it's not easy. And obviously on this show, the Superpower podcast, it's my job to try and unpick and understand the superpower, I suppose, that's helped you through the difficult times, but also makes you who you are. And it's a tricky one because there's a lot of things going around my mind again now. Now, before I share that with you and we go into a discussion, I've got a bit of a quick fire round of questions, if I can. And sometimes I change these, so I go a little bit off script, actually. But I suppose the first one, I'm going to change this a little bit actually, is that if you were having a dinner party, you can invite 3 people, past or present. Who would be around your table and why?
My mum and dad. Just get them around this table, because I never had that. I never had the two of them sit there, and it's a privilege that a lot of people have, and they don't recognize it. And it's a privilege that, I know from your point of view, that you had and it's taken away and you miss it. It's just such a simple thing. That's what I would have. I have my mom and dad in there. And of course, if you want to add more and more, I'd like my daughter to meet them. I'd like my wife to meet them, and so on and on. So if I could have anybody, it'd certainly be them.
It's like I saw this thing online. It's a simple photo where it's somebody who's got a call incoming from their mum and their dad, and it just says, if you can still have that incoming, they're so lucky today. And I think anybody listening to this who still has that, I think it's something that never to take for granted, because one day it won't be there.
Just go and have a meal with them, hug him and tell him you love him.
Exactly. Right. Well, I know me and you can't help but get deep in, even in the quick fire round here. But no, next one is, if you were given a one-way ticket to any place in time, past or future, where would you go and why would you go there?
Can I give that to somebody else? Because I don't think I want to. I want to be here and now. I'll do it. I want to be here now, because what am I going to do now? I made so many mistakes. Which one am I going to correct? Where do I start? There's so many events I could have done better. But if I did them better and I sat here, I'll probably go and do them better again, because there's nothing that has been done that can be done better. So I wouldn't know where to start. And in future, I don't want to know what's coming. I don't want to know what's coming, because I think when you take all your pains, all your pleasures, all your laughs, all your cries, all your anger, all your comforts, and you wrap them all up, that's life. And you then go and put a sell-by date on it, and we don't know how long that is. So every day is precious. Every day life is so precious, and every day is a little bit extra. So I don't want to know what's coming. All I want to do is get through today the best I can, and try to have a better day tomorrow with what I learned today, and carry on like that for. I want to be 120 before I'm gone.
Easy. And finally, if I could give you an unlimited supply of one thing in your life, what would that be?
I think that's the easiest question I've ever heard. Friends. Friends, because what else do you need? What else do you need if you got friends? If you go to another city and you lost everything, if you got friends, you have somewhere to stay. If you're hungry and you got a friend, you got something to eat. If you're stressed about something and you want to shout it out, there's a friend to go to. If you want advice about something, there's a friend. Anything you need. If you got enough friends, and I don't think you're ever going to have enough, you don't need anything else.
Beautiful. It's powerful. And I think it's that's the thing, is like with family, some people have known them their whole life, but friends, you can meet people and there's such a depth of connection that can never be taken for granted. Now, Farsh, this is a tricky one for me, because I've actually got 2 or 3 different superpowers in my mind that I'm still, even to this very second, finalizing this. Okay. Could go in 2 very, and with me, it's about the right vocabulary here. So it's not just words we hear all the time, and I have to explain myself. And I think that this is a word that we probably don't use enough. And I feel that people in society, we don't have enough of this. Now, what it is, I feel like in getting to know you previously and today, I mentioned before this, you're often always putting other people first, or you're trying to, or in all of your moments in your life, you think them through, you try to be considerate of others, the Polish man, the family. I never want to put anybody out. Whereas we live in a society where I think too many people, they do put themselves first. They do think of themselves rather than the group. And I just think that this superpower, we don't speak about it enough. I think you're just so thoughtful.
Bless you. Thank you.
And I just feel that people don't take the time in life to think about others enough. And everything that you've done is, you're thinking about people. You're thinking about the communities that you've served for 31 years. You're thinking about the life you want to create for your daughter. What does the word thoughtful mean to you?
I guess considering others' needs over your own. But also it is a bit selfish on my part, because they gave me something first. So I've become that because of what was done for me. So I will, I'm somebody that I'm uncomfortable when I'm given compliments.
I know.
And I've tried to deal with it better since I read one of your pieces about 6 months ago about this is a gift. Don't throw it back in somebody's face. So I'm trying to take it, and I'm grateful for the compliment. But it is because somebody's been good to me. Somebody's done so much for me, and this is payback for me.
And it is, and it's this whole, the other word I will say out, and I won't use it again, was around selflessness, because you are incredibly selfless rather than
you.
selfish. But I think for me, it went above and beyond that. You're selfless and you think of others throughout the process. And that's why I went towards this. No, I think it's incredibly important. But, if people are listening to this, and maybe it's people who don't always put other people first, or they don't think of other people, what would you say to people just to create a bit of a kinder society?
There's so many people across the world in different scenarios spend so much of their time and energy to take things away, or if you build in weapons, you creating stuff that's not good for the environment and humanity. And you think if you just put a little bit of that effort to do something good, doesn't have to be all of it. You don't have to wake up tomorrow and think I'm going to be great and wonderful. Just put one little bit towards something positive. That'd be great, wouldn't it? If that would turn around. But I'm living in a real world. I know that's not going to happen. So what I'll say is, if you go about your everyday life, look for the opportunities where people need help. Don't leave it for somebody else. If you get off a train and somebody's struggling with this suitcase, don't think somebody else will do it. There's thousands of people walking. They will do it. You do it. If you see somebody trying to cross the road and they're struggling and there's 1,000 people in that road, don't think somebody else will do it.
True.
You do it. If you see people being shot at, if they're under fire, don't think somebody else will sort that. Do something about it yourself.
And I think it's a powerful reminder that we've spoken about your journey today of going from, a country of living in fear to one of having freedom that I think far too often we can take for granted. And within freedom, you've got freedom of speech. You can take action and do something about it. In this country, we're here in London in the UK. I think it's such a privilege to have a voice.
Yes.
But don't be silent, and it needs to be used.
Yeah. Use it for good if you can. That's the trick.
Absolutely. Well, my final question, Farsh, I like to finish with is that, when we look forward and we talk about Farsh Raoufi MBE, what do you want people to remember you for?
I'm a public servant. That's what I've been. And I'll just, if I could be remembered for somebody who did their duty well, that'd be a privilege.
Powerful. Now, I'm sure everybody whose lives you've already touched and thought about, I'm sure they see you that way in the lives you've changed and saved in the fire service. So thank you. And from me, thank you so much for being on here and sharing your story so authentically. I appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing your future and supporting along the way.
My pleasure. Thank you, Gareth.
Also, a thank you to you, our listeners, for being part of this community. By watching, subscribing, liking, and also leaving comments on all the videos, it honestly really helps us to grow the show and to invite more incredible guests to join us in the future. Now, our plans are super exciting, and with your support, we can make this even bigger. And so if you do enjoy the show, please do hit the follow button on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you're listening to the podcast. It really means so much to me and all of us at the Superpower Podcast. And if you're watching us on board your in-flight entertainment, remember to follow us when you land, or maybe you've got Wi-Fi in the sky. For now, it's a huge thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode of the Superpower Podcast with me, Gian Power.